Personally, I think Agadashi tofu is the most popular way to serve tofu. Essentially, it's silken tofu that's been deep fried until it's really crispy on the outside and then served with a really aromatic broth. This is so delicious and I always get it when I go to Japanese restaurants, but it's actually quite fun to do at home. So to start with, you need some tofu, and the tofu that I've chosen and is again quite classic to use is the silken tofu. Silken tofu is soft tofu. It's all about texture when it comes to tofu. And what I've done is drained off the excess liquid by just pressing it between two clean chucks and then a little bit of paper toweling and then squeezing it between two plates. By doing that, we're removing as much moisture as possible. You really don't want to get the tofu that's quite firm or the one that goes really spongy. It's really not right for this dish. Now, very gently, because it does break quite easily, place that on a clean board, and then with a knife, we're going to cut this into 4 pieces. And one block of about 300 to 400 grams of tofu will feed 2 people as an entree. So once you've cut this, we'll get a bowl, and into the bowl I'm going to add some potato flour. You could also use corn flour for this. This is a great flour for deep frying because it's not going to go stodgy and it's just going to give it a really thin, crispy film around the outside of the tofu. So into a bowl, just enough to coat the amount you're making. Spread that out and then very carefully lift our tofu. We'll pop it in there, 1 piece at a time. Now, I've been preheating a pot of vegetable oil. You want the oil to be at 180 degrees for the perfect fry. So let's just carefully dust our tofu on each side there. And then once you've coated each side, you want to dust it off again so you don't get big clumps of the potato starch. So just shake it. And now we're ready to fry. Now, these don't take long to fry, but what we're looking for is just a light golden colour, and you'll hear it, you'll feel it. When it's really crispy, it's ready to come out. So one at a time, gently lower it into the oil, and I'll get another one, shake off excess. In it goes. And these last 2 can go in very gently when you're working with hot oil. Don't throw them in, lower them in and away from you. In here, what I have is some dashi stock. Now, dashi you can buy from good Japanese grocery stores or any Asian grocery store. Dashi comes in a powder form, so you do need to dilute it with water, and it's 1 tablespoon of dashi to about 500 millilitres of water. That's the flavour that I like, but if you want a more intense flavour, you can add a little bit more of the powder. Now, I've just brought that to the boil, and it's just heating up again now, and then we can add some flavourings to it. It does have a fishy flavour to it. You could also change this if you can't find dashi to fish stock, or if you didn't want to use a fish stock, you could also use a little bit of vegetable stock. Now, I've got some mirin here. Mirin's a rice wine, but it's a little bit sweeter. It's a great condiment to have in the pantry. And I need some saltiness to this, so I'm using some soy sauce here. We want about 2 tablespoons of soy sauce. I'll just get my measuring spoon here. We want to accurately measure it. Perfect. Now I'll give that a mix, and that's essentially the base to the sauce. You just want to warm that up, and you only need a ladleful per portion. Now let's have a look at this tofu. I think it's ready, but we'll just test it. Oh, look at that. See how puffy they are? And I can just feel they are crunchy, so they can come out onto some paper toweling, drain that off, turn the stove off. All right, let's plate this up. See how easy this is to do? I'll get a ladle and I'm going to add some of this broth to a shallow plate here. Oh, look at that colour, isn't it fantastic? And then we can add our tofu. And you do want to add this tofu to the broth and then serve it immediately so it stays crispy on the top in particular. We'll pile it up. Yum! And the condiments. I have some daikon, and if you don't know what daikon looks like, it looks like this. It's a radish, and it's not too peppery, it's quite mild. So I've just cut it quite finely into a julienne, and we'll place that on one side here. And in my pantry, I have a little bit of dried seaweed, which I've rehydrated. You can get dried seaweed from most grocery stores now. You'll find it in the Asian aisle. And now, so a little bit of shiitake, and these shiitake were dried and I've just rehydrated them And we're just going to slice them quite thin. I'll add a few more because I love the flavour of them. And then I'll just sprinkle them around in the broth. You can actually even rehydrate them in the broth when you're cooking the broth because it'll give it a great flavour. And then a little bit of spring onion. Just slice that on an angle. And now I'm just really showing off and making this look extra special for you. And last but not least, some bonito flakes. Now, not essential, but if you do get to go to an Asian grocer, get your hands on this. It looks fantastic when it goes on. It also gives it a really nice smoky flavour. It goes straight on top there, and you'll see it start to melt on the top and go straight into that broth there. Voila, Agadashi tofu. Like my dad would say, people would pay good money for that in a restaurant. Well, you can make it at home, save some money, impress your guest.